Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Both Madcap and Phil sent me a story out of New Jersey, and it's an interesting question. There might be situations where you might get stuck and someone comes to your aid and tries to help you. And if that person gets hurt in trying to rescue you, what's the recourse? And a better question is, suppose it was not you, but it was your dog. And that's the angle here on this case out of New Jersey, because a woman says she got hurt trying to rescue someone else's dog. And she wants compensation for her injuries. And the courts of New Jersey so far have told her no, that's not how it works. So the court nixes lawsuit from a woman injured while rescuing a dog. Nixes is one of those words, I've never used that in spoken language. I doubt I ever will. But they use it a lot in headlines because it's a short word. It would also work in Wordle. 5 letters, nixes. By the Associated Press, a woman who says she suffered serious injuries while trying to save her neighbor's dog cannot sue the dog's owners. This is from the New Jersey's Supreme Court ruling on Monday. The dog apparently got itself into a canal of some sort, and the woman decided to get involved. The court unanimously rejected her claims that laws allowing for legal action for injuries suffered while rescuing a person who put themselves in peril should allow her to sue for damages. So there's a law on the books in New Jersey, apparently, that says that if you get injured trying to help someone, then you might be able to recover damage for that. But a dog is not a someone. And I understand, in many respects they are, but legally they're not. And again, I'm not saying I agree with that, but I'm simply telling you what the law is. So don't get mad at me about the law. Particularly, don't get mad at me about the law in New Jersey. I got nothing to do with the law in New Jersey. The justices acknowledged that the law could apply to property in some cases where protecting human life also is the ultimate aim, but it will not help this woman saving a dog from the water. In her lawsuit, she alleged she suffered neurological and cognitive damage after jumping into the canal at the New Jersey shore in 2017 to save the dog after she heard someone call for help, and the dog was unharmed. Now, I hate to read too much into any of this, but someone called for help. So she goes over there, she sees a dog in the water. She jumps in the water in an attempt to save the dog. Many people might not know this. Dogs invented a thing called the dog paddle. Humans adopted it later, but dogs actually came up with it. It's a pretty clever idea. They paddle. Now, I had Milo and Wolfie, both very, very shaggy, furry, hairy dogs. They had big, thick coats, okay? And if they got wet, they didn't like it. They didn't like going out in the rain because their fur would get wet and they didn't like it. But I had taken Milo and Wolfie to lake shores before, and they would walk out pretty much up their armpits and realize, okay, if we go any deeper, it's going to get ugly. And they turn around and they walk back to shore. But I had, on more than one occasion, actually carried them out and put them in the water just to see, and sure enough, they can swim. I've had other dogs that can swim. And a couple times, I think even Milo or Wolfie followed me out to where suddenly their feet weren't touching the ground anymore. They weren't touching the bottom anymore. And they're like, oh, cruised around a little bit and headed back in. So she jumps in an attempt to save the dog. It does not say here if she managed to get the dog or not, but it says the dog was unharmed, which makes me wonder if the dog didn't get itself out of the situation. But we don't know that. So I'm not saying that I know that for sure because I don't. The court wrote that there could be circumstances in which trying to save property could qualify under the so-called rescue doctrine, but ruled those circumstances did not exist in this case. And they give the example of, let's suppose a house is on fire and you went running in there because you thought somebody was in there. And you run into the house in an attempt, and it says here, a reasonable belief that the inhabitants are in danger. And you go in there and you try to put the fire out while you're trying to find the people inside, and you discover they're not in there. But you get injured in the process. Apparently in New Jersey, you might have a cause of action against the homeowner. Because without that, people are going to go, I'm not going to go in there, I could get hurt. So the other thing to note about this, and I glossed over this, but this is the case in most states, pets are considered property, okay? So when a lot of people hear the word property, they think real estate, but that's real property. Real property is real estate, a vacant lot or a lot with a house on it. That's property, but it's real property. There's other kinds of property, and that's just simply things, right? So this pen is a thing, it is property. Likewise, where's my widget? My widget, every time I need a widget, I hold this up, go, there's my widget. That's property. It's a thing I own. It's got some value, but it's a thing I own. And so most states consider pets to be property. Now that's a strange distinction to many people because we don't think of our pets as property. We think of them as family members. And most people I know who have pets agree with that statement, that pets are family members. Now, I'm not saying that they're the same level as a sibling or a spouse or a parent, but most people say, yes, this pet is a part of our family, okay? So when the courts point out, well, you might think that, but they're just property. That, of course, is an odd distinction, but that is the way the law works. So most people would say, well, you know something, I did pay money to get my dog. I paid money to maintain my dog, but that's not really the value of that dog, okay? So that's one of the problems with the courts is the courts can't always make you whole. So if something bad happens to your pet, a court is likely going to look at that and go, well, we have to reduce that to cash damages. We can't do anything else, right? So the judge wrote, notwithstanding the strong emotional attachment people may have to dogs, cats, and other domesticated animals, or the great significance some may attribute to family heirlooms or works of art generally considered as irreplaceable parts of our cultural history, sound public policy cannot sanction expanding the rescue doctrine to imbue property with the same status and dignity uniquely conferred upon a human life. So the statute says a person, human life, that's what the court's going to say. They're not going to expand that. Now, obviously, the legislature could if they wanted to, but they haven't done that yet. Now, here's a really classy thing. The attorney for the woman who got injured here and who represented her in the case said that he and his client are disappointed in the outcome, but happy that the court considered our arguments and decided to expand the rescue doctrine, which will now encourage behavior intended to protect human life. So I think it's a classy thing. Because quite often you see attorneys, after they lose, ripping on the court, saying the court was wrong, misguided, it's unfortunate, they ruled, No. This guy says, hey, look, we're happy they considered our arguments. Consider them. And then he said they decided to expand the rescue doctrine, which they did a tiny little bit, because the doctrine and the law say that if you get injured in trying to rescue a person, then you might have a cause of action. And the court's making it clear that there actually doesn't need to be a person involved if there's a reasonable belief a person is involved. And that actually is an expansion of how most people had read it up until that moment in time. I think it's a good ruling also. And one of the reasons I think it's a good ruling is you always have to ask yourself when you see a statute like this, how will it affect people's behavior, assuming they know the law? And I understand that a house catches on fire, no one's going to stop and go, wait a second. Supreme Court ruling last week says I can run in there if I have a reasonable belief that people in it do have yeah, I've got a reasonable belief, I'm going in. I understand that. But you still have to analyze the case law like that. You have to analyze the laws like that. So you ask yourself, do we want to encourage certain kinds of behavior or do we want to discourage certain kinds of behavior? So if a house is on fire and there's people outside going, I think there's people in there, do you want people going, I'm not going in because if I get hurt, wouldn't be worth my time? Or do you want people saying, I'm going to go in there and try to save somebody, and if I get hurt, well, I'll see if I can get taken care of, but I'm not concerned about that. So, like I said, whether or not that calculus takes place in a person's mind, I can't say. But I think that the laws should always be written in such a way as to encourage good behavior and discourage bad behavior. And so if the court clarified that, this woman's attorney is very classy to say it this way because he's happy that the court considered her arguments and decided to expand the rescue doctrine, which will encourage behavior intended to protect human life. So that's a story out of New Jersey. The woman who jumped in to save the dog cannot recover from the owners of the dog. And keep in mind that in many states, most states, dogs and cats and pets are simply considered property. So there you go. Madcap and Phil both sent it. Thanks a lot. Questions and comments, please put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I wish life had an undo function.